One of the key components to ITIL Foundation is the 4 dimensions of service management. And Chris is once again going to take us into this exciting area of ITIL Foundations. What do you have?
You know, a lot of people might joke. They might say, come on, Scott, exciting. How exciting can the 4 dimensions be? Actually, it's quite exciting because it takes one of those guiding principles we were talking about. Think and work holistically, and it brings it to the forefront. It literally says, look, when you're doing things, Scott, in your IT operations or in your business or just in general, you need to look at the big picture. You need to look at everything. And there are 4 dimensions that we need to look at. Well, first off, we need to think about them overall. I mean, that would probably be a good idea. So take a look at this. First off, the 4 dimensions really represent, like we said, think and work holistically. It's about a holistic experience, a holistic approach to IT service management, and the impact of external factors as well is going to be taken into consideration. Because a lot of times people think, well, it's just about the stuff that we do. You know, if we take care of our business, everything else will just be great. Not necessarily. There are certain things that we need to be aware of. And the idea of the 4 dimensions is that the 4 dimensions operates within these external factors, these sometimes constraints that can come our way. All 4 dimensions and the external factors that affect them really need to be considered when you are planning a new service, updating your service, maybe even sunsetting and closing out your service. A lot of times we just think about the new or the maintaining the status quo, but sometimes it's time to remove something out of our service catalog, and then that gives us the resources, that gives us the capability to then do maybe something new that we've been planning on doing, and maybe we have a vision for and we really want to do that. So it's very important that we think about that. And the thing that we want to think about, and we're going to be covering this here in just a little bit, is the service value system. It lives and it breathes within the 4 dimensions. Now, I know you've all been excitedly looking forward to this, but here's one of our fantastic Axelos People Search ITIL 4 diagrams. This is the 4 dimensions and the external factors in all its glory, right? Hey, I got a good news for you, though, for those of you taking the test. The external factors, we'll discuss them, they're important, are not on the exam. There's a lot to it, and you know, as we would say, they're only going to ask you 2 questions on the exam about the 4 dimensions, and they figure, well, you know, we got enough with the 4 dimensions and what we're doing. And you can see them right here, right? You can see the organizations and people. We can see the information and technology. We see partners and suppliers and value streams and processes. So keep thinking this word. This is to support a holistic approach to service management, to IT service management. So think about these 4 dimensions. So let's break these down. What do you say, Scott?
I think we should break them down. Let's get into them.
Okay. All right. So the first one is, I honestly think is probably one of the more important ones, and that is the people, right? In fact, if you think about it, when you look at those 4 dimensions, you're looking at really the who, the people, organizations, also your partners and suppliers that you're interacting with, the what, which is going to be your information and technology, and then, of course, the how, which is the value streams and processes. But like I said, one of my favorite is the people because, well, Scott and I are people, so we, you know, got to deal with people, right? So we got the people, right? Organizations and people. This is basically a look at the fact that if you have an organization that's bigger than Chris Ward LLC with just its 1 employee, you're looking at things that grow in complexity. The more employees, the more staff you have, the more complex the relationships between your teams and your groups and the parts of your organization. You know, that can become greater and greater as it gets bigger and bigger. So you need to think about, well, it's not just simple enough if you have 10,000 people on in your team or overall organization. That'd be an awfully big team, 10,000. Yeah. But if you do that, if you think about it, there's all of the one-on-one relationships. There's all of the interaction between the departments. There's all of these things. It's not like you can just go, we're going to just flip a switch and have a new service and offer it either internally to the internal customers or even externally. And so you need to take into consideration things of the complexity that we have. So part of the thing that you need to identify, though, especially if you're taking the exam, is organizations and people are going to be talking about primarily, and where you really need to kind of maybe make some notes on this, is the way the organization is put together. So we would say, quite simply, the org chart, right? How the hierarchy of the organization, or if you are a smaller org that's more of a, some of the new development companies that are very flat in their hierarchy, right? Even then, you need to think, well, that's still relationships. Still things that we need to take into consideration, even if it isn't you get the C-suite, then you get the SVPs, and you get the VPs, the directors, senior directors, and breaking it down. Not necessarily. Sometimes it can be flat, but you still need to take into consideration the way the organization is put together. You also need to take into consideration the roles and responsibilities. I'm going to say that again, kind of like there's an echo in the room. Roles and responsibilities.
Is that an important thing?
I think it might be important, Scott.
A little important.
Just a little bit. Okay, roles and responsibilities. Okay, make sure you think and associate that with organizations and people. Also, we're going to be talking about the people. Not only from just the fact that you have headcount. We remember we talked about this, about when you're an asset. You're not only a resource, right? Scott's not only tangible, but he also has capabilities. He has these intangible things. So part of the thing that you're going to want to look at is that in organizations and people, think about skills, leadership quality. All of these things are also going to be taken into consideration as part of just looking at this very first piece, which is organizations and people, Scott.
Got it.
Okay?
Got it.
Okay, so that's number one. And again, we keep saying this. It's not that it's the first thing. It's just, or the most important thing. It's just the first thing on the list. Okay, so we're going in clockwise order, so we're doing that. All right, second dimension, information and technology. Now, here's an interesting thing. Up until now, we've been kind of pushing this. How do I say this? It's not about the technology. It's how you use the technology that ITIL is all about. It's because technology changes and even information changes. But at the end of the day, it still says on your business cards, typically, IT operations, IT department, IT service management. Stands for information technology. And so there is going to be information technology. It's kind of, like we said, the what of what we do. So we're going to take a look at this and say to ourselves, let's think of a few ways to associate with this particular dimension. And because the rest of it, I think we pretty much understand. Most of us that are taking this course come from some sort of IT background, whether you're in management or whether you're in day-to-day operations. And so I don't think I have to tell you that IT means computers and networks and software and things like that.
All the fun stuff that we like to put our hands on, right? Like all the geeky stuff.
They should call it the toys, This is the toys that we talk about, right? Okay, so take a look at this slide. You've got a couple of things. First off, the dimension includes not only the information and knowledge necessary, the information part, but also the technology. And they give you a list here. First off is the examples of workflow management systems. Then you have knowledge bases. Then you have inventory systems. Then you have communication systems. And then you have analytical tools. Notice there's that one word, though, that I kind of emphasize. Systems. In other words, that the technology is the thing that gathers together these things and make them work and to integrate together. So technology, that's why we have it, is going to be talked about, especially when they're talking about four dimensions, in the term, they'll use a lot of systems. And the reason why that's important is a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about workflow. Now, I just said workflow, not workflow management systems. See, workflow is actually a part of the fourth dimension, which is value streams and processes. So just be really careful. And if I haven't given you Chris's handy dandy exam tip number 238, it's this: read the question and the 4 possible answers very carefully, making sure that you're not missing anything. I'm guilty of this, especially if it's something I'm feeling confident on. If I took the ITIL 4 Foundation exam right now, I'd probably be like, yeah, I got this, right? ITIL 4 Master, I'm just going to blah, blah, blah. And I could miss something and I could get a question wrong. So be careful about that. So watch carefully. If it says workflow or workflows, they're talking about the value streams and processes. If they're talking about, another one here, communication systems, if they're talking about communication methods or communication models, they're talking about more about how people communicate with each other. So that would be organizations and people. So if it says system on the end of it, you're good to go. Inventory control systems.
Bases,
yes.
tools.
Yeah, all these
Gotcha.
things, keywords. See, Scott knows this stuff. He's got it.
Getting it.
All right, so that's what we have. So service management, we obviously are increasingly using greater and greater technology, from artificial intelligence to machine learning, robotic process, automation. You've got quantum computing coming out. I was recently at a conference where we were talking about, what are we going to do with digital certificates in a quantum world? And how is that happening? I mean, my mind's kind of like going, I have a hard time just with regular digital certificates sometimes with RSA and stuff. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like. But hey, they're working on that right now. So as an organization, if you want to stay secure in a quantum world, that's another thing that you need to think about. It's one of the dimensions that you need to operate in. Make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay, so we've got the first dimension, organizations and people. Second dimension is information and technology. The third dimension is the partners and suppliers. Now, partners and suppliers essentially are any third parties that you integrate with as an organization. So it's not within your organization. These are things, and remember, because this originally came out of the UK, the Brits don't always, but they usually refer to what we would call here in the States vendors. They call them suppliers. It's funny, they actually use the word vendor too, but this is the way they have it in the official material. So just remember, supplier is kind of like vendor. Think you have a vendor, whatever tool vendor you have, or whether that be your equipment. If you're getting stuff from Dell or HP, or you're getting Cisco gear, or whatever it is, that is talking about, that's the people you're working with. Those are your suppliers. Now, that's different from partners. Now, as you take a look here, we put a chart up here, and don't panic. Do not panic. You do not need to memorize this chart. It's just giving you an example of the type of cooperation that happens between your organization and, let's say, a standard run-of-the-mill vendor or supplier. That would be something like, I think they give the example here, procurement of computers and phones. That's easy, right? Yeah, you typically call the sales department, and if you're big enough, you get your own person, and they maybe give you a portal where you can go to and get your special pricing. And you go, well, I need 150 laptops this month. Got new employees coming in, boop, 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 and there you go. It gets shipped to you. You're done, right? That's pretty much the extent of your relationship with whoever you pick, Lenovo, HP, Dell, whatever. And so that would be more of a limited kind of cooperation and engagement. Who's responsible for what? I'm responsible to pay you to get the equipment. That's it, right? And they're responsible to ship it to us and make sure it gets to us on time as agreed. So that's a very simple relationship. But when you start talking about partnerships, we were talking, over a meal just the other day, Scott, about how one, company that you're very familiar with was partnering with another company dealing with cars, right? Yeah. And about how, if you rent this car and then you can use it for your business, and we've got this great partnership and relationship. Well, that's a lot more than just I show up with a credit card and I rent a car.
Absolutely. It's a complete change of business model. It's it's a change of value proposition. Right?
Exactly.
So it's complex, and we see this a lot of times too. With the slide talks about partnerships between our suppliers for cloud computing, for example, or managed service agreements, right?
Yeah.
Like those types of things become that partnership where we need somebody to deliver a service for us.
Yeah.
And they have to understand our operations, and they have to understand how we operate.
Exactly, and that deepens the relationship and the amount of the amount of conversations that we need to have on sometimes a daily basis.
Daily basis.
So this is important. Okay, so just remember, third party. All right, partners, suppliers. You're going to be good when it comes to the small willet room. Now, the next one we have here, and the final one, is the fourth dimension. Now, the fourth dimension is all about value streams and processes. Now, value streams, it is kind of funny. We recently talking with David Cannon and Marcus Krauss, who are some of the big guys at PeopleCert, who now own the ITIL property, intellectual property, and talking with one of the biggest things that they are really trying to promote that makes ITIL 4 different, or they would say improve over ITIL 2011 and version 3, is value streams and how they're used. And so this is a big deal in the world of ITIL, and there's a reason why. It's because it's very powerful. If you know how to use value streams, you're going to find that your organization is going to just see its efficiency and effectiveness skyrocket. And they've got, by the way, they've got hard data. They've got hard numbers from actual companies that show how you can do this. But for those of us taking the ITIL 4 Foundation exam, what do we need to know about it? Well, believe it or not, here, let's take a look at the slide. We're going to start at the bottom, at processes, because processes are kind of like the underpinning pieces that you're going to have as part of your value streams. Processes, as you can see, and by the way, there's a definition here. You might want to know it. You might see it not necessarily as the answers that they're looking for, but it might be one of the 4 possible answers, and if you're like, oh, that sounds familiar. What is that? It's a process. Notice it's a set of interrelated or interacting activities that transform inputs into outputs, okay? That's that first part. That's the part you need to know. It's basically you're doing some sort of work. You're doing some sort of tasks to take some sort of input. You do some work, an activity on it, and that produces an output. That's a process. And by the way, that's all you really need to know about it. It's not, they don't at this level require you to get into the intricacies of like, well, how and they don't make, they basically, how do I put this? They don't want you to get too in the weeds on it, right? Because every company is different with different types of processes, different ways of taking those inputs and turning them into outputs. And so that's why ITIL is like, we know you have them, and they're going to be an important part of putting together these value streams. So let's pop up to the next part. Value streams. What's a value streams? It's a series of steps that an organization takes to create and deliver products and services to the consumers, which means that it's going to literally be you're going to start with some sort of opportunity or demand, and then you're going to have a series of steps, which usually include a bunch of processes along the way that then at the very end of this value stream creates something that is a deliverable of value. That can be something tangible, like a widget, product, piece of hardware. That could be a report. That could be, there's a lot of things that can come out of a value stream. It could be the resolution of an incident. It can be the solving and resolution of a problem. It could be the implementation of a change. See where I'm going with this? So value streams are a way to take these practices that we're going to talk about and then put them into actual, I'll just use the word, practice. You're actually using them. Make sense?
Makes sense. So if we were to carry over my laptop example from yesterday, right, or from our previous video, if we were to carry that over, essentially I would take the process and reorganize the process to add more value through a new value stream.
Yeah.
To get to my internal customers, solve my internal customers' problem, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So that's how you can apply these components.
Yeah. So each one of those steps, you know that at this particular step is the order process. Okay, well, that's a process. You have an input and as an output that comes out of that. That'll be step one. And then you move on to step two. Well, this output then gets to be what? The input into the next step. And then on you go. And so we'll actually show you one in the video on the service value chain. So just so you understand, that's where you build these value streams. In fact, here, take a look. This is just an example of a value stream map, which shows you what a value stream might look like, where you have some input that comes in from some source, and then you have these series of steps, little processes, things that are going on, and then at the end you have an output, which can either, notice what they say, can either go to another value stream, like kick off a secondary value stream or a tertiary value stream, or give you the final product that you're looking for. It all depends on how you put these together. But the good news is as you look at these value streams, remember in the collaborate and promote visibility, we talked about how we identify bottlenecks and how we identify waste. Well, guess what? This is a visual representation, value stream map, of a value stream. And so what are you able to do? You know the resources and the inputs that are going into each one of these steps. And then you notice that, hey, step number 3 only has 1 person on it, whereas step number 2 has 3, and there's 4 people on step number 4. So you can go, wow, there's a bottleneck right here. How do you know that? By looking at your value stream, mapping it out and saying, aha, we found it. Now we can do something to solve it. Now, we did want to leave you hanging, though. Let's talk a little bit about the external factors. And again, this is not testable, but basically the external factors that you saw on the outside of that diagram are made up of, well, what they basically call the PESTLE model. And that's basically each one, it's an acronym, stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. And these are factors that will constrain you or affect you that you have little to no control or influence over. Notice I said little. Sometimes you can. For example, we'll do political. Here's the dealio. Here, at least in the States, about every 4 years, we have elections. And then what happens in those elections? Somebody gets elected to be, president or a senator or something like that. And it usually goes, it's just, if you look at history, it's very cyclical. As we like to say, the one group gets in office and power and they make some changes, and then it goes along, and maybe 4 to 8 years later, then the next party comes into power. And what do? They usually turn around and go, no, we want to do it this way. Well, here's the thing. You as an organization, you might think that, we only like it when this particular party is in power, or we only like it when these particular group of people are running the show. But the thing is, you need to realize that's cyclical. You can't always control that. And now, obviously, Scott and I can take our constitutional right to vote and vote for who we think. And you can maybe even say there's a little bit of influence. And this is what we call here in the United States lobbying. So you can lobby Congress and say, hey, really help us out, okay? If you have this in place or the laws are this way, but do you ultimately control that? No, you don't. And so that's a constraint that you have to operate within, whether it's every 4 years, 8 years, or however long. So that's just an example about how these constrain the delivery of your services and the delivery of your products and producing value to your customers.
All right, so with the 4 dimensions under our belt, we are ready to move on to the service value system, and we're going to do that in our next video.